Might be our last hike for today. We're at Sable Falls here. It's 500 feet. We can do it. Grand Sable Dunes is here and North Country Trail. All right, down there. 500 feet. You can do it. 168 steps. I had the same route coming back up too. This is one view of the Sable Falls. You can only go down a little bit further, but soak this in. I like recording the sound of the water.
They're now located back in South Munising Bay, and their location served a better purpose because they were more visible. Now today, as we look back in Munising, you see that red laser back there. That's the laser range tower. That sandstone is basically compressed sand that's been packed down by the glaciers 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. This lakeshore is exceptionally unique in that there's a lot of natural spring activity taking place here. The rocks here are weeping all year round, and because there's so much water coming out of the rock here, we get walls of ice that form here in the wintertime, and you can walk behind the walls because the tops of the cliffs stick out a little further than the bottoms. They cantilever, so then this becomes Grand Island ice caves. Beautiful sight to see. So about every 3 years you could catch a guided tour, come out and view the ice caves. Beautiful sight to see. Hopefully this year we'll be able to get out here. It's been about 5 years now since we've been able to come out and see the ice caves due to thin ice. That's kind of a dangerous coast for boaters. If you get into trouble here, you have no way of getting Island. The sophomores of 67 probably thought they were pretty smart. They came out here late at night with a can of spray paint and they almost spelled it right. You're supposed to have 3 O's in your sophomores. They do come out and freshen that up on their 10-year reunions. Seventh commenter posted a short video of the black bear rescue. after that, I can tell. So you can see how this is weeping all along here. Check out all the water coming off the rock shape here. That used to be probably a rock picker's paradise. A lot of our passengers ask if there are Euchre lights in there. So if you know what Euchre lights are, it's soda light stone. You go out after dark, you find it with the black lights in. And it's going to come into view in just a few seconds. It will come in that starboard bow. Here's the bow. This is the front end of the ship. And don't worry, it'll come over here too. So that bow is only 8 feet from the glass. It's 10 feet under the surface here. Look at this massive tow post sticking up off the bow here. This was kind of important. It was teams of horses that were employed to tow these ships around Niagara Falls through the Welland Canal. Right behind the tow post, you can see the chain locker hatch where they store dock lines and anchor chains. And you're going to see the mast hole coming into view next. This big round hole is where the foremast came to the deck. This was a 3-foot diameter white pine tree, 110 feet tall, that probably popped off when the ship sank. Very common for a wooden ship to lose its mast. There's a bilge well that follows the mast hole where they pumped water out of the hull after a rainy day. And now this huge rectangular opening is called the forward cargo hatch opening. And this is where they loaded or unloaded the iron ore. So clear today, you can see right to the bottom of the cargo hole. Check out this damaged area. You see this big round timber sticking out of the wreckage down there. That's the mast boom. It looks like the mast boom popped off the main mast when it sank and went crashing through the deck 22 feet below. And now we're seeing a long, skinny opening that we're following along here. This is the centerboard trunk. If you've ever seen a sailboat out of water, you know how a sailboat has the big thing sticking out the bottom. It's called the centerboard. It keeps the sailboat going straight. And they were made raisable so they could lift their centerboard up into a watertight compartment built into the middle of the cargo hold. This is some of the cargo. This black gravel-like substance is high-grade iron ore scattered along the deck there. And now we're starting to see the aft or rear cargo hatch. Now watch the back corner of this hatch. You're going to see an old oak barrel, 30-gallon oak barrel that was discovered back in the late 1990s. Divers found it off the shipwreck. We put it on deck for you to look at. We're not sure if it belonged to the Bermuda, but it's definitely been confirmed. It goes back to an 1840s construction style, so it's definitely of the era. It may have belonged to the early settlers. It's a 30-gallon oak barrel, and it does have a spigot on one end, therefore it was employed to hold a liquid. Not sure what the liquid was. I can only guess it was probably water. Here's this big opening. This is the cabin trunk. The main cabin was on the stern of the ship. It popped off when it sank. Very common to a wooden ship to lose its cabin. Here's the rudder post coming into view. This rudder post goes down to the rudder. The steering mechanism was a steering wheel, and it was mounted above that, fixed to a pinion gear. And that steering wheel was probably removed during the salvage in the 1880s. The stern rail comes within about 6 feet of the glass, 8 feet under the surface, and 28 feet to the bottom. Now the Bermuda is 131 feet long, it's 26 feet wide, stands 20 feet high. To me, the most impressive dimension is how many tons of water it displaced when it was fully loaded. Just to give you some scale, like here on the Miss Munising, when we're fully loaded, we displaced 42 tons of water. The shipwreck underneath you displaced 488 tons. So the shipwreck underneath us is more than 10 times larger than the boat you're on. All made out of wood in 1860.
Wow.
We drift a little bit slower this direction, which is a good thing because our first drift was pretty fast. Here's the mast hole again, and then the bilge well. Yep, so the question was, what was the value? Well, we know the cargo was super high-grade iron ore. It came out of the Jackson mine. It was some of the highest-grade iron ore ever mined on planet Earth, like 90% pure. In 1870, when it sank, that cargo was valued at $13,000. If you convert that to today's money, that's $27 million. And the Bermuda was built 10 years before that at a cost of $8,900. So probably a real similar figure in the cost of the ship and the cargo. We're probably talking 50 million if we convert it to today's money.
There's a fish.
Where? Oh, there's one.
So yep, the salvagers did take most of the iron ore. There's still about 2 to 3 feet of iron ore left in the hold. But in the 1880s, salvagers did come back here and get as much iron ore that was practical. Some of that ore is scattered along the deck here. You can see some of it. It's just kind of like the gravel crumbs there over towards the starboard side rail. On our next shipwreck, I'll try to take you out and show you some iron ore in its raw form. Really cool looking stuff. We'll see if the weather allows us to get out to the Hetler site here today. It is blowing pretty good, but we do have a good 30 or 40 minutes before we get out there, so the wind may back around.
Is that a fish?
Here's the oak barrel again, aft cargo hatch. You can see a broken side rail, and we can see
Oh, there's the barrel again.
this cabin trunk. This is again where the main cabin was situated. Cabin came off. It was The 16-man crew was rescued by fishermen, so no lives were lost, but the Hetler was 36 years old. It was made out of wood, had just slammed into a rock reef. It wasn't salvageable and was just left abandoned on the rocks. So it sat on the rocks for 3 years until 1929. The Coast Guard had to use dynamite to knock it down because it was a navigational hazard to smaller vessels. Also, it was a bad omen to sailors who saw it as they passed by. So if you check out Brandy's shirt, you'll see what it looked like on the reef, and we're going to see that side. I'm going to show you the forward part of the bow, and that anchor is coming into view first, you guys. Don't blink, because here it comes. This anchor is 8 feet long, 5 feet wide, 2,500 pounds. And that's lying right off the bow of the ship here. This is the left-hand side. There's a big ring there, steel ring, that's called the hawseye. That's where the anchor chains came through the side of the ship. You're going to see a couple of hawseyes, and then you're going to see the portholes. There's 3 portholes that looked out from the captain's quarters, right up in the top of the bow, and those are those round holes we're going over. Check out this second porthole. It's got the anchor or the window housing still in it, and after the third porthole, you can see this steam wheel, 3 feet in diameter, weighs about 100 pounds. This came off the steam winch, and the steam winch was used to hoist cargo or lumber onto the top deck of the ship.
Steering wheel.
So that wheel was actually an artifact that was stolen from this shipwreck 2 years ago, 4th of July. Brandy and I came out on the 1 o'clock tour, and we noticed the wheel was missing. So we posted the status of the missing wheel on our social media page, and 4 days later a hot tip came in, and we were able to identify where the wheel went and return it to the shipwreck 4 days later. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go. Check out these engine mounts, you guys. You're going to see these huge beams with the gigantic bolts sticking out. This is where the 485 horse steam engine was fixed. Steam engine's no longer there. But look at those bolts, you guys. Those bolts are 4 feet long. The nuts on the end of those bolts are the size of softballs. And now we're seeing keel and ribs, basically the backbone skeleton of the ship. This is the inside of the cargo hold, kind of like what the crew members would have seen as they worked below deck here. Lots of railroad track in there. The Hetler had an internal rail system set up into its lower deck. So when they loaded this ship with a bulk stout cargo, they loaded it into little rail cars, which were maneuvered throughout the hull. And it was right here at the end of this wreckage, Captain Pete, owner of Shipwreck Tours, discovered something pretty cool. He found 8,000-year-old tree stumps right here, wedged in between the deck planks down there, like the shipwreck happened upon top of the oldest pieces of wood discovered in the Great Lakes right here. And they're down there. They look like rocks. 8,000-year-old tree stumps. And keep watching, Group 1. I'm going to take you for a little ride out on the reef and show you what this thing ran into. So the Hetler carried salt, table salt, actually 1,100 tons of table salt spilled into Lake Superior here the day it wrecked. So no, you don't see it. No, they didn't salvage any of it. A lot of people ask the valid question, did the salt have an impact on the environment or sea life? Probably not, because we do have a lot of natural salt deposits here on the shoreline of Lake Superior, so I'm going to say no. And on the way out to the reef, you guys, if it doesn't make you dizzy, watch the bottom. I'm going to try to pass over a couple of pockets of iron ore so you'll get to see what this stuff looked like as it came out of the mines. It's beautiful stuff. It's blue, kind of sparkles in the sunlight, and there's no rust on it at all. Like iron ore typically you see is rusty looking. This is super pure iron ore, some of the purest iron ore ever mined, and it came from another shipwreck called the M.M. Drake. So it's right in here. The M.M. Drake ran aground 30 years before the Hattler, and the captain ordered his crew to dump his cargo right here. So check this out. So they dumped their cargo, and they called that lightering their load. By lightering the load, there's another pocket over here too. By lightering the load, they were able to float free. Here's some. The M.M. Drake later wrecked for good. Really blue looking stuff, cool stuff. They later wrecked for good near Whitefish Point. And so if you ever get over to the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in Paradise, you would see the rudder of the Drake. It sits right outside the museum, some 90 miles from here. Now we're almost to the edge of the reef. Our water depth is coming up. We're at about 8 feet of water. We're gonna go right off the drop off. You're gonna see this drastic change, and then we'll take a look for a couple of our favorite artifacts. Actually, it's way better out here than it was earlier, Brandon. We have about a 2-footer. Earlier, we had like 4-foot rollers. Here it goes, you guys. Look down. This is 8 feet of water. Check this out. Whoa. And that's 30 feet. You can see how drastic that was. Let's spin around here. I'll show you a couple of my favorite objects. And then we'll switch. You can see there's a lot of stuff up there, down there, sorry. There's that big round cylinder that I'm gonna try to follow because that points right to my favorite art. But yeah, really clear visibility. This is the best time of the year to look down, especially into the deep stuff here. So we're more than a quarter mile from where we started, and we're still seeing debris from the Hattler because that ship broke in half right here, and all the heavy equipment, machinery, and toilet accessories ended out over the edge of this reef. Keep watching, you guys. Let's bring it back up on the rock, give you one more look.
Oh my gosh.
And bam, 8 feet of water. That's where she broke her back right there.